Hey fam, this video is a personal update. It's not about politics, although I would argue that all politics are personal. But this is not a political video. This is going to be a brain tumor update. So if you're here for a brain tumor, if you're following me because of brain tumors, that's what this video is about. And I'll leave explicit mention of my politics out of it. So first, I want to say just thank you. I always like to start with a thank you. Our community has supported us through, 8.5 years of living with this thing, man. It has not been easy. I acknowledge how incredible it has been to see our kids grow up from 4, 2, and 8 months old when I was diagnosed in 2016. They're 13, 11, and 9. Amazing for me to have that time with our kids. Absolutely incredible. And that is not lost on anybody in our family. Long-term survivorship has been a gift that we did not know that we would receive. Period. New sentence. And long-term survivorship is tough, man. It's tough in the beginning because the newly diagnosed setting, because, it's all overwhelming. Everything is new. It's a lot of, invasive, surgeries and things. You hear a prognosis, or at least, you suggest that, this is kind of grim, right? This isn't a great outlook. This is a really tough disease. And all of that is true. And in the very beginning, it is overwhelming and it is terrifying. Sadly, for IDH mutant gliomas, IDH mutated glioma, so glioblastoma, not grade 4, IDH wild type glioblastoma, not IDH mutated grade 4 astrocytoma, which is my classification. IDH wild type glioblastoma is an especially vicious and devastating disease. And in the early stages of newly diagnosed patients, it is exceedingly difficult to come to terms with that prognosis. And many times, the disease trajectory will include a lot of impairments to one's body. And that looks a little bit different for everybody. I always forget that a lot of y'all can drive. I have not driven a car in, nearly 9 years. We've just never had seizure control to the point where I have felt safe driving. And the state has my license anyway. So even if I wanted to drive, it would be illegal for me to do so. But I forget, some of y'all are out there driving, and good for you. Because it would help out my family if we had a second driver in the home. But that's not the only thing that's the newly diagnosed setting is big and scary and frightening and terrifying. And many people experience, mere months from diagnosis until they complete their lives. Mere months in many cases. If you get a year and a half or 2 years with an IDH wild type glioblastoma, then that is probably on the longer end, the tail of the survival curve. So I have love and empathy and solidarity with those who are in newly diagnosed stages of care. I'm 8.5 years on. We're working on our 9th year right now. And what I'll say to you is that there's no better or worse. Truly, it doesn't make sense. We shouldn't have a race to who's got it worse. That's a ridiculous use of our time. But the challenge is transformed significantly when you get into long-term survivorship. And I am in that stage right now. We had recurrence in November of 23. I was on chemotherapy all through 2024 that managed to keep the tumor at bay until it didn't. The past few scans have been increasingly worse. And we were like, is this just variability from scan to scan? Is this necrosis? Is this pseudo-progression? Is this late radiation effect? Is this because the chemo I was on for a year is causing inflammation and things, and that's what the scan is picking up in terms of enhancement? We had some confirmatory evidence with a mass spectroscopy scan. Mass spec scan, you're in the same MRI tube. It's just kind of tacked on to the end of your traditional MRI, but it measures different things. It's a metabolic imaging technique, so it measures chemical composition rather than actual image findings. So when you put all the information together, you've got flare signals, right? You got flare signal abnormality, which probably everybody's used to hearing. With perfusion, I get my MRIs with perfusion, which looks for essentially leaky blood vessels and things, which would be indicative of tumor. And the mass spec scan has a chemical kind of signal that would, lead us to believe that it might be tumor. All of those elements came together in my most recent scan that said, worsening flare enhancement, the chemical composition that is indicative of tumor growth, and then the imaging findings themselves. We see that the tumor is enlarging and spreading from where it has been really around my right parietal lobe, and it's now moving into the corpus callosum, and we see that there's some midline shift, meaning that this scan not only confirms tumor growth, but shows that the tumor is spreading, which is not ideal. When you begin to get a tumor that begins to cross hemispheres in the brain, that typically is a negative prognostic indicator for glioma, or brain cancers generally. It's scary, and it's hard to know what to do. There is not a standard of care protocol for recurrent disease in high-grade brain cancer, high-grade glioma. We don't need a vocabulary lesson, but glioma is like a larger umbrella, and then you have things that fall under it, like glioblastoma, astrocytoma, oligodendroglioma, etc., are just subtypes broadly of glioma. We do not have a standard of care therapy for recurrent disease. We don't have the longevity data. We don't have efficacious therapies to know exactly what to prescribe in the recurrent disease setting. It is amazing that I was back on temozolomide or Timidar for all of 2024. And we really did not expect that drug to have much efficacy because I was on that drug already for an entire year. And our tumors leverage our body's natural sort of evolutionary mechanisms, excuse me, so that you have evolutionary selective pressures. So as tumors are met with agents, they begin to mutate to evade the agents themselves. Because I'd been on Timidar for a year, we were not super optimistic that it would have a significant effect in 2024. And yet, not only did it have long stability, it shrunk the tumor for the first 3 months or so, all the way back in the beginning of 2024, about a year ago or so. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So now we're in a place where, okay, Timidar's lost tumor control. The tumor is growing, it's spreading into the corpus callosum, crossing hemispheres. And so what do you do? So we've talked about surgery. It's a deep tumor now. So am I a candidate for surgery? Well, we're consulting with neurosurgery right now to figure that out. We've had some great drug approvals around IDH inhibitor drugs. The most notable would be vorasidenib. And if you're in the brain tumor community, I'm sure that you've heard about vorasidenib. It is an IDH inhibitor. It received its FDA approval in a low-grade indication, low-grade gliomas. It was in, or is in rather, a phase 3 trial right now, a combination trial of vorasidenib with temozolomide for high-grade settings. We don't have a report out from that data yet, as far as I know. So we're thinking about vorasidenib for me because I have an IDH mutated glioma. We're thinking about an old chemo like CCNU because that would be a novel therapy for my body. We're thinking about radiation, although the way that the tumor is spreading, we don't know if we'll have a good target for radiation. So this is, 8.5 years out. And I would not trade my time with my family for anything. And I know how fortunate I am and how many people would have loved that time with their loved one who was diagnosed with a high-grade brain cancer and likely did not get the time that I got. And I will never not be mindful of that. I've been mindful of that for years and years and years. I've been mindful of the gift that I've received. And it's exhausting. This has been 8.5 years. It's been 2 full years of chemo. It's been radiation. It's, I'm coming up on my 50th MRI scan. It's a lot of scans. I've been through a battery of testing to rule out stroke as a differential diagnosis sort of throughout the past few years. I continue to have motor impairment on the left side of my body, and that's worsening with the tumor growth. I continue to have seizures. I continue to have headaches. And I continue to be mindful of my own mortality. So that's what it's like, man. But I want to go full circle and come back around to thank you. Um, Y'all have been reading my blogs. Thank you, blog posts. You're helping me write a book. I've got a book that's nearly finished. And I've been opening that up chapter by chapter to paid subscribers on glioblastology. Thank you to those who have been able to pay a little bit to get access to that because it, helps fuels my writing. I could not be any more appreciative. Y'all have been dropping off bottles of whiskey this week. After I wrote a thing about, you can see my post, 30 Seconds of Silence, that talked about sipping on ball jars of whiskey, with friends, just in silence, just to be together. The presence is meaningful. In the medical community, we call that an empathetic witness. So thank you for those who have been my empathetic witnesses throughout. Thank you to those who have given us generous gifts. I've actually been gifted a couple of bottles of whiskey that I never would buy on my own because they're expensive. I'm usually just buying Evan Williams, a cheap whiskey. But thanks everybody for that. And thanks for just your continued support. It's hard, man. I'm struggling right now. My mental health is in the dumps, dude. I'm meeting with my therapist. We're working on that. We're working. I am a resilient son of a bitch. I'm able to get up every day with a somewhat positive outlook. So thank you. And this is really super freaking hard. This is the hardest bit that I remember since my initial month-long inpatient stay way back in 2016, 2017. It's hard and I'm struggling. And I want you to hear that. And I want you to know that if you're struggling, we are struggling. And that's okay, and we can say that. It's good to be in touch with what really is going on, and to not mask it, and to not lie about it, and to not, close yourself off because you don't want to share that. I'm struggling, man. I'm struggling. And if you're struggling, that's okay. Thank you to those who've got our back. I just wanted to check in and just be real. I'm sorry this is a 12-minute video. That's an investment of your time if you've watched this. But I needed to get this off my chest, both with gratitude, appreciation, and thanks, but also realism and pragmatism, that this is really hard. And wouldn't trade it for the world, man, but this is also maybe one of the more difficult, kind of existentially challenging stretches that I've been in just about as long as I can remember. So there's a little truth, a little honesty, a little vulnerability for the community, and just again, my thanks, my appreciation, and we just keep going forward. All right, much love, Blada.